Welcome to the Living the Dream podcast with Curveball. If you believe, you can achieve. Welcome to the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, a show where I interview guests that teach, motivate, and inspire. Today, we're going to be talking about mental health and personal development. I am joined by author Maggie Kelly. We're going to be talking to her about how she got into mental health and about her book and even about the mental health issues that she struggled with all throughout her life and various times, and all that she's doing to help others get through what she experienced. So Maggie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Curtis.
Well, why don't you start off by telling the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I started writing online about a year and a half ago. I primarily write about self-help, psychology, and mental health. And mental health is a subject that I really hold near and dear to me. When I was a teenager, I struggled a lot with depression, and it's followed me throughout my life. A large part of it has made me the person who I am today. But a few years back, I experienced something really scary. After a series of unfortunate events, my brain had just had enough of all of the grief and trauma, and it kind of just broke. I had a psychotic break and landed in the mental hospital. And it took a long time for me to get over it and recover. But once I did, I started to write about those experiences online. And eventually, it turned into the first book I ever wrote and published, Recovering from Depression.
Well, kind of tell us about your struggles with depression. And I know you also did electroshock therapy. I just interviewed a doctor that does innovative treatments like that at her practice. So just kind of talk about that and your struggles with depression and what it was like going through electroshock therapy, and tell people what it is.
Sure. So my depression was really bad. I always liked to think that I was okay, but that's the facade we put on. And so when I had my break, I got really deep into that. I was kind of stuck in this mental state that I couldn't get out of. And I was saying bizarre things and doing bizarre things that I was completely unaware of. And I needed something to snap me out of it. So that's where the electroconvulsive therapy came in. People also know it as shock therapy. And normally you get that idea in your head of like the awful 1950s movie where someone's strapped in and they're given shocks without their consent. That's not what it is. You have to consent to the procedure, but once you do, they put you under general anesthesia and they inject a muscle relaxer in you so that they can induce mini seizures in your brain and your body won't move. And it's a lot like resetting a computer. So essentially, after a series of being shocked, my brain rebooted and was able to function like a normal person again.
Okay, well, tell us how you actually got into mental health. I know you became interested in it very young, so tell us about that.
When I first started experiencing depression, I didn't really understand what it was. All I knew was that I felt so empty, numb, and alone. And I had a hard time dealing with it. So as I got older and people started to talk about this thing called mental health, I was like, what is that? But it was always like this whisper in the room because nobody actually wanted to talk about mental health, but it was just this undercurrent. And so I started to educate myself about it and I started to learn more about it. And slowly it became my entire life. I read about mental health and I practice all the self help techniques. I was not successful with therapy, but it's remained a really important facet of my life.
So through all the things that you've been through throughout your life, if it's one lesson that you have learned through all of this, what is it?
I think the lesson would be that as dark as it may seem, there's always light at the end of the tunnel. You just have to keep pushing through until you get there.
So tell us about your book. Tell us what we can expect when we read it and where we can get it.
Yeah, so I started writing the book kind of through articles. So I didn't really have the idea at first in my mind. I just was writing down the things that I knew. And then one day I said to myself, well, I bet I could turn this into a full bloom book. So I pulled all these different articles together and then started writing pieces in between and kind of compiled everything until it turned into my book. And I wrote a lot about my different experience with depression, like different stages where I had really low downfalls. I talk a lot about self sabotaging and recognizing your part in mental health. And then I end up talking about ECT and other alternative treatments. You can get it on Amazon.
Okay, so if you could look back in the past and talk to your 14-year-old self, knowing then what you know now, what would you tell that young girl?
First, I would hug her because I know she's been through so much. And then I would tell her that she is going to be okay. Even when she doesn't believe it, know that she is not alone. Know that you are loved, that the world is better with you in it, and you're going to get through this.
So throughout your life, when do you feel like you've grown the most?
I moved to LA in 2019, and it was during a particularly bad season of depression. But while I was there, it really challenged me as a person. So, despite all the negativity going on in my brain, it pushed me outside of my comfort zone. I had to do things I wouldn't normally do and meet new people and try different things. And as a result, it changed me.
So tell the listeners about any current or upcoming projects that you're working on that people need to know about.
I am getting started on my second book. It is actually going to be a fiction book. I started writing the book in middle school about our school being haunted by ghosts, but I never finished the project. And so now I'm picking it back up, I'm modernizing it, and I'm going to tell a story about the school being haunted by ghosts. I'm expecting to have it complete in a couple of months and hopefully published by the end of the year.
Absolutely. What so listeners can keep up with everything that you're up to, throw out your contact information.
You can follow me on all socials at Maggie P. Kelly, P as in Pauline. And you can check out all my stuff on my site, maggiepkelly.com.
Okay, we'll close us out with some final thoughts. Maybe if there's something that I forgot to touch on that you would like to talk about, or just any final thoughts you have for the listeners.
I think just know that even in the darkest times, they're not going to last because life changes. That's change is a constant of life. And so it's never going to stay the same. So even if it's bad now, it'll get good again. It'll get bad again, but it'll always get good again.
Well, they always say that trouble don't last always. So, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you check Maggie out, pick up her book, check out her new book when it comes out. Check out her website and everything that she's up to. Please be sure to follow, rate, review, share this episode to as many people as possible. And actually, before we go, Maggie, if there's somebody out there struggling with mental health issues and they hear this episode, can you give out any resources that maybe they could contact for help?
Yes, I would check out the National Alliance of Mental Illness, NAMI, their website, and they have a ton of great resources. They have online therapy sessions that not therapy sessions, like group coaching sessions that you can go to and talk about your troubles. And they provide great resources for people who love someone who's depressed so that they can help them get through it.
Do you happen to have their website handy for people? If not, what would they Google?
You can just Google NAMI, NAMI.
Perfect. That'll work. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you know of anybody or you yourself might need some help, mental help, just Google NAMI. And if you have any guests or suggestion topics, C Jackson 102 is the place to send them. Please be sure to tell a friend about the show. And as always, thank you for listening. Maggie, thank you so much for joining me today.
I had a great time. Thanks.
For more information on the Living the Dream podcast, visit www.djcurveball.com. Until next time, stay focused on living the dream.